Yo, how's it going guys? Liffy here, bringing you an in-depth look at Shadow Priests in Mythic Plus in patch 8.3. A lot of people seem to be asking on the Priest Discord about getting better in Mythic Plus, so I'm here, dare I say it, to fill in the void. Bear in mind, this guide's been made with the idea that you have access to the relevant essences, traits, and understand the basic Shadow Priest playstyle. If not, the links are on screen, and they'll direct you to a full Shadow guide or a rotation guide, so please feel free to check them out too. As a Shadow Priest, you're not going to be looked for as much as other ranged classes. This is generally down to an average amount of utility and community perception. When it comes to damage, we're way up there with mages, rogues, and demon hunters, overall, but whether they'll let you come and play is a different story. If they do though, they'll be glad they did. On screen are the sections we'll look at, and timestamps are in the description below if you'd like to skip to a particular section. Alright, let's get into what talent traits and essences you should be running. Iris Major, Blood of the Enemy, Lucid, and Breath of the Dying minors. Some people are running with Breath as a major, which can give good results, but it depends on you sniping dire mobs for resets and damage buffs, and if you're not Jason Bourne, you might scuff it. So, we'll focus on Mean Beam Major as it's the go-to and the easiest to master. Talent-wise, you'll be running essentially the same as Raiden. Purple talents are mandatory, yellow ones are the ones you might want to change up. Misery's the go-to, as having both dots up gets your ghost popping off straight away and it's more reliable with a pug tank. Dark Void's alright in low keys, but doesn't come off cooldown quickly enough for every other pack most of the time. The burst damage and insanity is nice, but Misery's easier to get used to and has way more positives than Dark Void. Shadow Crash is viable in low keys, but nothing over an 8. Auspicious Spirits is just too powerful with our traits, synergy, not to take. Some people have suggested taking Mindbender over Linger and Insanity in keys where the tank's slow and stacks would drop off. An undergeared tank or healer or bursting weeks are the only times this should be an issue, and even at that point, time between pulls shouldn't be long enough to where you'd find Mindbender pulling ahead of Linger and Insanity. Dark Ascension isn't worth using because it's clunky, and with the right traits, downtime between forms should only be a few seconds. Azerite stays the same for Shadow in all PvE content. 3 Chorus, 2 Spiteful, and 1 Whispers of the Damned. The Old Searing Dialogue and Thought Harvester build only really has value in low keys up to about an 8, where mobs don't last very long, but you'd miss out on a fair bit of single target damage, so if you can, stick to the raid traits. Luckily, our gear and stat priority stays the same for all PvE content, with them varying slightly depending on your corruption and gear levels. In Mythic Plus, you'd lean more towards crit, as every situation bar a few boss fights have more than one target, so crit gets stronger. More crit means more ghosts from Shadowwed Pain crit, and with lots of crit and lots of targets, you become a fountain, spewing Casper and his boys all over the shop. Generally, it's crit, then haste, then mastery, then intellect and verse. As always, playing the Sims, doing a Sim, is the best way to set up your character with enchants and gems. Like I said in my full guide, quick nav or deadly nav weapon enchants, never machinist, brilliant, and crit or haste gems depending on what your Sim recommends. When it comes to consumables, you want to take the Greater Flask of Endless Fathoms, Mech Dal's Big Mech Crit Food, and for potions you've got a bit of a choice. For min-maxing, you can go for Superior Intellect Potions for AoE, Focused Resolve Potions for single target, or Unbridled Fury Potions for general use. Personally, I always use Unbridled Fury. The DPS difference between the 3 is quite minimal, and in general I feel like Unbridled Fury Potions have the most worth in every situation. Corruption stays pretty much the same for us in terms of what's our best. Severe, Expedient, Gushing Wound, Void Ritual, Racing Pulse, Twisted Appendage, and Twilight Devastation. The amount of corruption you want to run is up to you. If you feel you can deal with Barry from Beyond and Giant Eyeballs, go for it. Personally, in lower keys I run up to 52 corruption. In higher keys, I only run 17 corruption. You never know when Barry's going to sneak up and jump you, and in a high key, that's usually a big F in chat. We're pretty lucky, we don't have to carry much extra gear for different sets besides corruption. Best trinkets for Mythic Plus are the same as raids. The Vita Charge Titan Shard, the Psyche Shredder, or the Mort's Claw. Just remember, Mort's Claw's huge when coming out of a void form like the Mechagon trinket to burst one target, but loses value as an intellect stick. But Psyche Shredder has more uptime with its proc and the same int level. The Inscription Trinket's good if you can't get any of the other ones, and Rathian's Trinket's quite good, whereas Dungeon Trinkets aren't that great. Conch would be the only one worth using, and even that's not brilliant. If you want an in-depth rotation, I'll drop a link to that video below. but this will assume you know the basics of the rotation and its nuances. The main idea is to have the dungeon feel like one long fight, keeping chorus and li rolling as high as possible for as long as possible. This relies on your tank or healer more than you. The tank should be aware of how to pull for you to maximise you being there, but if not, just let them know that you'll perform much better if they can keep downtime as low as they can. The way you'll start depends pack to pack, if you've got stacks or not, or if you've got insanity or not. So to make it simpler, I'll do a couple of examples, a pack of 5 targets and a pack of 6 or more targets. On up to 5 targets, you'd essentially use the single target rotation, filling with Mind Seer instead of Mind Flay, making sure everything's dotted and using Void Bolt on cooldown. As mobs are filtering together, dot them up, and Shadow Word Void or Flay. When they're in range for Seer, use it, because it's the fastest way to build insanity on more than 2 targets. Erupt, Void Bolt on cooldown, keeps 2 global cooldowns between Void Bolts, like Shadow Word Void into a half a Seer into a Void Bolt, or a full Seer which is 2 global cooldowns into a Void Bolt. For 6 or more targets, you want to dot things as they group together and start searing when they're in range of each other to get into form faster. Any mob that lasts more than 7 seconds gets a VT. Anything smaller will generally die to sear and other people's damage, but make sure you Void Bolt on cooldown and dot up what needs dotting. You should stop casting Shadow Word Void and just mind searing Void Bolt on cooldown when there's more than 6 mobs. If it's a large pool that takes a while to gather, or you're having to DPS on the move as it clumps up, keep your rotation going and dot as and when you can or need to, making sure you don't forget to Void Bolt every 2 global cooldown. The priority is making sure you're in form as long as possible to get high chorus and li stacks for the next form, like normal. So, besides boss fights, when would you pop Shadowfiend? As I mentioned in my full guide, he's used for insanity, not damage, so if you're on a pack of mobs and there's going to be more than 3 minutes before the boss, you can use him at the usual 19 plus stacks to get used to it, or 25 stacks if you're comfortable or geared, especially if you're coming up to a pack of badass mobs that can be an issue if they're not burnt down quickly. The extra chorus of insanity stacks and lingering insanity stacks from using Shadowfiend will make a difference. Unlike a lot of classes, we can buff the Mean Beam with our traits. Chorus's stacking crit buff make Mean Beam hit a hell of a lot harder, so the optimal time to use it is when you go into your second form after generating loads of chorus stacks. You'll notice a big difference using it willy-nilly on cooldown compared to if you use it after going into your second form with chorus stacks up. You use it the same way on boss fights and trash packs, with it gaining more value the more target it hits, so it can help delete trash packs or do a chunky bit of the boss's HP. Deciding what packs to use it on is key though. Don't use it on 2 mobs if the next pack's 6 mobs and you can build a big form on the 2 mobs to get a bigger Mean Beam on the 6 pack, actually doing some burst AoE. So here's a few tips and tricks for you to bear in mind when you're doing your keys. In any dungeon that starts outside, you can use the Turnip Punching Bag from Mists to pre-build Insanity and then Mind Seer an ally to keep it up. Super useful for the first pull in Told's Gore or Freehold for example. Just be careful where you place it because the keystone can't be started whilst you're in combat. Always be casting. If you've got to move, use Void Bolt, Shadow Word Pain and Power Word Shield to generate Insanity and stay in form longer. Fade is your friend. Skittish weeks in particular, or a low geared tank that struggles with threat, and you'll be glad you can threat drop with Fade. If you've got the Sanctum trait, when you fade, you gain a magic absorb shield, which can be very useful. Mass Dispel has a 45-second cooldown, but can be used in a variety of ways. Offensively purging groups of adds when they're buffed like the Templars in Shrine. Defensively, dispelling the AoE fear from the Obelisk mini-boss. It's a quick cast, generates insanity, and being useful is a good way to get invited back. Dispel Magic is an offensive single target dispel, get rid of some hots and buffs. Silence, interrupting adds is useful not just because you can kick a cast, but they can reposition after being kicked, helping them group up if they aren't already. Life Grip or Leaf of Faith, if your friend's in trouble, give him a cheeky wink and pull him off. To safety that is, you dirty bugger. Most people won't appreciate it, but it can save lives. Shadow Men to off heal, you only have enough mana for 4 Shadow Men's or 5 Power Word Shields though. Always try and find uses for Vampiric Embrace. Extra healing's almost always worth using. Don't use it randomly though. If it looks like your healer's falling behind, as long as you're able to hit something, you'll be helping out. Dispersion is our big damage reduction. Or you can use it to cheese and conserve insanity when you've got a move, or if you've got a mechanic on you, so you don't drop out of form. Make sure you don't end up needing it later though, for one of those "oh shit" moments. Psychic Screams and AoE Fear. It can be useful to stop spellcasting if your silence is on cooldown, and move mobs stood in things like Sanguine. Bear in mind, any damage taken can break the fear though. Also, they could run into other mobs whilst feared and pull extra, so think before you fear. Shackle Undead has a lot of potential in King's Rest and Atal Desire. Super niche, but you can stop the raptors and berserkers leaping around, interrupt casters if no one's got a kick. Being able to help dispel is super useful for fights like Avataris Thralis in the Temple of Snakes. The Frog debuff reduces healing done and does damage, so purify disease and help out. There's a lot of things we can dispel in dungeons. A mind controlled mob does not get bolstered, so take that in mind, and you can help out with some crazy pulls if the group want an AoE and there's one mob you don't want to bolster. Mind control it and it won't happen. Don't listen to Illidan. Come prepared. Make sure you've got scrolls for the buffs that you're missing, drums for the missing bloodlust or time warp, invisibility potions for skips, and health potions just in case. The last and probably most important tip that I wanted to give is think about your positioning. Being in the wrong place or facing the wrong direction when Twilight Devastation procs, for example, means that you could end up pulling extra mobs. A dead DPS does no DPS, so bear that in mind, be aware of where you're stood, mix these tips into your gameplay, and hopefully you'll get some better results. There's a few other things which I feel are a bit more dungeon specific or affix specific, so if you'd like me to go over how I deal with them as Shadow or anything else you'd like me to go over, let me know in the comments below. And as always guys, if this video has helped you out at all, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!